How I started my law firm with no clients and no money. One of the things that makes starting a law firm great and a great business is that there's really very low overhead required and there's a low barrier to entry. Today, we're talking about the top 3 things I did in the early days for business development, the top 3 things I spent money on, and the top 3 expenses I avoided at all costs. Pun intended, but regretted. So I say there is low overhead, just first things first, and low barrier to entry when you're starting a law firm, but there's one huge caveat to that. You need to be an attorney to start your own law firm in the vast majority of states. So really the initial capital and barrier to entry comes from going to college, going to law school, passing the bar exam, becoming an attorney. But once you've done that, if you're already an attorney, this is the low barrier to entry business because there's no inventory. There's very little technology required. Even malpractice insurance can be affordable, particularly if you're a newer attorney. It's actually cheaper for newer attorneys, believe it or not. So this video is about how to bootstrap it because that's something you really can do. You can bootstrap a law firm. It takes 2 things. 1, the ability to bring in business, and 2, the ability to keep costs low. So this video is going to be about bringing in business and keeping costs low. I'm going to tell you what I did. This is not how I currently have things set up, but I'm going to tell you the things I did in the early days to bring in business and keep costs low. All right, so for getting business, first and foremost, focus on relationships. Even with all the marketing pipelines out there and all the supposed marketing gurus, still the best way to bring in new clients is by having a great reputation, by having relationships with referral sources. So that means other attorneys who might be more expensive than you or who practice in different areas. It also means realtors, business leaders, commercial real estate brokers, insurance agents, accountants, whoever is serving your ideal client but in a different capacity can be a great referral source for you. So I think every cup of coffee or just phone call could be worth hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to you. Focus on relationships with potential referral sources. 2, gamify your business development efforts. This is huge for me still, but it was particularly huge in the beginning. The basic principle here is what gets measured gets managed. It's just like keeping track of a diet or workout schedule. If you've ever done any fundraising for a nonprofit or a political campaign or something like that, it's easy to do a bunch of activity and feel busy, but you really need to keep track of your activities to make sure you're not just busy, but you're actually productive and making progress. So how many cups of coffee with colleagues per week? Keep track of that. How many phone calls? How many emails? You can make it more complicated as you want, but assign point values to your activities and keep track of what you're doing. It's sort of fun, but more importantly, it's a way of keeping track of your efforts to see if you're doing enough, and it helps you learn what it takes. Because if you're doing what you think is enough, but you're not yielding results, you might need to do it better, but also do it more and raise the stakes of your gamified business development system. And if your practice management software can help you gamify your business development efforts, all the better, by far. Shout out to Practice. Number 3, I highly recommend this for new firms, particularly younger lawyers. ROG, MetLife, Legalese, legal insurance. These don't pay a lot per case, so you have to be efficient, particularly with the admin side of things, but they are a great way for younger lawyers to learn. Some of them do require a certain number of years of experience, but some don't, and they are a great way to just get cases coming in the door. And if you're efficient with them, they're worth your while. But you really have to be cognizant of the fact that they don't pay a lot unless you are efficient, so it's best to have a system, preferably a practice management system that helps you stay efficient with insurance cases, both on the intake side and on filing claims at the end of the case. We have automatic tools for that in Practice, but a very important point here is that there's no cost to be on these legal insurance plans. They cover a broad variety of practice areas. They're also a good way for you to gradually expand your competency into other practice areas because a lot of the cases are low stakes and they're generally appreciative clients because they're not paying you out of pocket. So I highly recommend this as a way to supplement your own business development efforts. I think a good early book of business consists of some out-of-pocket paying clients and some clients that you receive through legal insurance plans. And then the final thing I did for getting business, I said there were only 3 things, so this is a bonus. And this is sort of a segue to keeping costs low. I leveraged low-cost marketing solutions. So YouTube videos, for example, podcasts, social media. It's a great time to start a firm because you don't need a marketing budget to be able to get your name in front of people. You just need to be smart and you need to hustle. So that's about bringing business in the door. Now let's talk about keeping costs low. I'm going to tell you what I did spend money on in the early days and what I absolutely did not spend money on in the early days. The overall idea is I focused my spending on risk mitigation, not on the illusion of success. When I spent money, I thought, is this going to reduce my risk? Not, is this going to make me look successful? That may sound obvious, but it trips up more lawyers and more law firms than you might think, because as professional and mature as we may try to seem, it's still in many ways a peer pressure driven profession. We're a bunch of adults who are in many ways shaped by our concerns about the perception of our peers. But you have to rise above that if you want to be successful in building your business. All right, so what did I spend money on? One, malpractice insurance. This may have been my very first purchase. I would not have been able to sleep at night without it. In some jurisdictions, I believe it's required. In mine, it's not, but I bought it anyway. A smart entrepreneur I know once told me that a lot of people think of entrepreneurs as being impervious to risk, but that's not true. We entrepreneurs are thinking about risk all the time, and we're very strategic about mitigating it. So for me, malpractice insurance created a wonderful feeling of having a safety net where I felt okay going out there on my own. And the good news is that this may sound counterintuitive, but the first few years you're practicing, malpractice insurance is cheaper because there's just less that could have gone wrong at that point in your career. So if you're just starting out, this cost may be less than you expect. Insurance brokers work on commission, and I have received wildly disparate quotes in terms of price, so make sure to shop around. Just because a malpractice insurer was recommended through your bar association does not mean they are the best or most cost-effective for you. Be a smart shopper. The second thing I spent money on, very basic technology. I think you can keep your technology budget well under $100 a month and still have success as a solo practitioner. So I'm talking either Google Business Suite or Microsoft Office Suite, where you have a professional branded email, so you're not using like a Gmail address. It's like johndoe@lawfirm.com or whatever, and word processing in there as well. I think you've got to have at least a basic website. When I started in 2014, there was cloud-based law practice management software options available, but I thought it was cost prohibitive for me at the time because sometimes they run promotions where it's free for a little bit, but then their basic cost might be low, but they add on a bunch of nickel and diming things to get the features you actually want, and all of a sudden it's over $100 a month just for that one product. So I think you can keep everything under $100 a month if you're a smart shopper. My recommendation, of course, which is self-serving because I own a practice management software company, is to go lower price on that. So I do think you should have a system like that. Otherwise, you're going to have to put a ton of effort into keeping yourself organized without it. And figuring out all your billing and timekeeping and stuff without it is really hard. But my point is, it really does not need to cost that much. You can get the total technology budget under $100 a month. For legal research, bar associations offer basic primary source shepherdized legal research sources, usually for free or included with your bar association dues. So you don't necessarily need to break the bank on that either. In my opinion, publishers and technology companies have been attempting to monetize and privatize legal research for many decades, but the fact is that law is a public resource. It belongs to all of us. More and more courts are focusing on public domain citations, and it really should not cost that much. So focus on solutions where you can access our public records for free or at low cost. Fancy AI legal research options are not a substitute for your own professional judgment. So, okay, we've talked about malpractice. We've talked about malpractice insurance. The next thing I would spend money on is a virtual office. $75 a month, get an official address, receive mail there. They have conference rooms that you can rent by the hour to meet with clients, even though that's a surprisingly rare occurrence. More and more can be done over Zoom or phone than you might expect. Okay, so those are the things I would spend money on. What did I not spend money on? Correlated, I did not rent a traditional office. That expense alone would have tanked my business before it ever got off the ground. Sure, it would have been nice to have my logo on the door and to be able to show it off to occasional visitors, but what's really impressive is having a business that survives. And I would not have survived in the early days if I were also carrying an expensive lease. I eventually leveled up to a private office inside of WeWork, and after that a full office suite. But even today, we use virtual offices in many of our satellite locations, and I think it's a really good thing for businesses that are trying to keep costs low. In this day and age, you just don't need a physical office much of the time, especially when you're just getting started. Another thing I did not spend money on, I did not overspend on staff. There's nothing more validating than the feeling of making early hires, but you are doing them and yourself a disservice if you overspend on salaries. I used staffing agencies for virtual paralegal and then contract attorneys, and only later on did I level up to actual salaries. I was very conservative in my approach. You just have to resist the temptation of trying to look successful by hiring. It's exciting, it's validating, but it's dangerous. Third thing I didn't spend money on: swag, branded merchandise. The return on investment just wasn't there for me. It seemed more like a vanity spend. Fun to show to people, but doesn't really move the ball down the field for you. Success is better than the illusion of success. Your mileage may differ, but for me, those were the things that I spent money on and the expenses that I avoided. Remember, beware the temptation of spending on the illusion of success. Hope you enjoyed the video. Comment, like, subscribe. Check out Practiced, modern law firm practice management software, and thank you so much for watching.